This is your 11 a.m. panel. Today's heroines, empathetic overachievers or stone cold killers. I'm just going to read out the description. It says, they haven't been shrinking violets for a while, but today's heroines are developing a callous disregard for others, or are they maintaining the cultural equilibrium that made them heroines in the first place? With us today, we have Lawrence Schoen, Julie Czerneda, and Tamora Pierce, who hasn't joined us yet, but we hope will be dropping in very soon. My name is Kelly Robson, and I'm going to invite our fellow panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Julie. And Julie, please do mention what you have out in the world fresh for people to read, because we're all desperate for new reads.
Well, thank you. As a matter of fact, I can just turn around.
There we go. Yes, please do that.
And grab them. What I have out right now, and now being very shiny about it, is Gossamer Mage, came out last year and won this year's Aurora Award for Best Long Fiction, which was marvelous. Thank you. That's fantasy, and I have my new Essen book out. Mirage came out in August.
Gorgeous.
It's a great deal of fun to write. It's nice to write something fun right now.
Yeah.
I'm a Canadian science fiction and fantasy author, and I turned in a book last week, actually, so now I actually have time for a convention, so it's lovely to be here to see everyone.
That's nice. Great. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Lawrence.
Hi there, I'm Lawrence M. Schoen. I write mostly science fiction. Like everybody else, I've been having the year, but mine started a little earlier than most, and I've been kind of sequestered, or whatever the term is, since January, undergoing cancer treatment. So those of you who don't recognize me without the beard, that's where it went, along with about 35 pounds. My last book, and I don't actually have the real book, this is a proof, but it's the ebooks out there, is, we're reversed. Soup of the Moment, which is a Barsk prequel novella. And most recently, earlier last week, I started a Kickstarter for 100 meals, most memorable meals of authors from the 10 years I've been running my Eating Authors blog. And after less than 3 days, that funded yesterday. So now we're just trying to raise more money to give the backers more stuff. So I hope you'll check that out.
Fantastic. That's great. So that's up on Kickstarter, and where can we get a link to that?
It is. I will put a link to that in the chat right now, since you've invited me to do that.
Yes, please do.
I didn't want to presume.
No, we need links, we need titles, we need all the information so that people can get what they desperately want, and I know
absolutely. It's there now, a fresh and shiny link.
Excellent. So my name is Kelly Robson. I'm a short fiction writer from Toronto, Canada. And my most recent, freshest thing is a story called La Vitesse out in the Book of Dragons, which is a gorgeous illustrated hardcover anthology edited by Jonathan Strawn that came out this summer. So I hope you will check it out. It's a beautiful book. It looks fantastic on your bookshelf. And I really feel great about my story in it. So I hope you like it too. Going to encourage all of our attendees to put your questions in the Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen on Zoom, there's a Q&A link. You can put them in there. You can put them in the chat too if you can't figure out where else to do it, but the Q&A is a good place as there's some functionality that lets us handle questions. I may take questions as we move through, depending on how chatty we all are, or I'll take the questions at the end, and we'll try and get to everyone on. My apologies in advance if we don't get to your question. All right, so today's heroines, what do you think? Do we love them? We love them. We love women's stories, and we love to see women kicking butt, but is it going too much in the opposite direction? What do you think, Julie? How do you deal with that?
Well, if we're talking about things you can just quickly decide upon, so you've turned on a new series on Netflix and decided to choose whether or not to watch it.
Mm.
If it doesn't seem like a human being to me, or if there's no humanity there, in the male or female characters, quite frankly, either way, I will be less likely to spend my time there. I'm particularly sensitive to that now, I think, because we are in a situation where we're all more acutely aware of what it is to be a human being and what it is to be in a community and family. And I don't mind anybody that has a chip on their shoulder or has a challenging past, but I want to see a glimmer of a real human being that I could actually meet and have a beer with and that sort of thing. And even if I don't really like them a lot, you know, they're whole, I guess, is where I'm going. I don't see that. I don't care how good they are at kicking things.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Lawrence, what do you think about that?
You know, the question posed in the description of the panel, I wanted to just answer yes.
Yeah.
What I am bothered by is the one-dimensional characters, regardless of gender, and in the move to bring more women in as characters, so that particularly female readers find someone they can identify with in the fiction they're reading, as opposed to my growing up reading Heinlein, you know, juveniles, and most of the characters were young men, or reading Burroughs, again, young men. I welcome that trend, but I don't want them to be just one-dimensional. And I don't want them to be just the token female in a book that's full of males, because that's putting too much weight on that character. I want that female protagonist with a full range of her women friends, and I want them to be all different and fully realized people, so I can say, you know, I like this woman character. I don't much like the relationship character or even the villain, though they're fully realized women and not just, you know, one-dimensional props.
I wonder, though, are we putting too much pressure on women characters? But, you know, in the 70s, a huge iconic character of the 70s, and I'm sorry, the movie references are going to fly hard and fast in this one, because honestly, we've all seen the same movies more or less, and we haven't all read the same books. Dirty Harry, you know, stone cold killer. Why shouldn't we have a Dirty Harry female character, right? It was okay then for a guy. It's not okay for a woman? What do you think?
Oh, Dirty Harry also to me was a one-dimensional character. He was really fun to watch. And I get your point.
Yeah.
Absolutely fun to watch if I'm not committing myself to a reading of a whole book or watching a whole series. Absolutely. Right. In a movie setting, there's a whole lot of get out of jail free, because you're talking about, in many movies, 30 minutes in someone's life.
Right.
You're not expecting them to show you everything that they are. They have arrived on the spot, and then they go.
Right.
So I want more to know whether you can trust them to do what they do.
No, you're absolutely right. Go ahead, Lawrence.
I think Julie's point works very well in written fiction as well. I'm going to be much more forgiving in a short story than I am in a novel. In a short story, it's a much smaller, typically a small span of time. We're in, we're out, that's it. In a novel, I'm expecting character development, and as a result, that two-dimensional character isn't going to stand up for me. And I want more. And I don't just want to be hit with extremes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking the story that just came to mind when you said that, there's a story by Alexander Rennick called Random Blonde, which is fantastic. And it's definitely a story of a woman who is moved to murder. But wow, in just a short, maybe 3,000, 4,000 words, she is fleshed out, and you understand why she is doing what she's doing. And it's interesting, and it's really cool. So
I wrote, it just reminded me, I did my homage to the comic book Magnus Robot Fighter in a short story called Road Rage. And I reinvented the robot fighter is a woman with a scientific day job and all the rest of it, and her friends and the things that she does. But one of the things that didn't bother me at all was, do I have to make this character seem like she has a home life? I had to make the character have a history and a reason for who she is. But she's going to kick some serious butt, and she's going to be smart about it. But again, short story. That's what I wanted to go there.
What's that title? I'm going to type it in.
Oh, Road Rage. It came out in, oh goodness, that wonderful thing from Zombies Need Brains, Robot Overlords. All hail our robot overlords. I had more fun than the AI weenie.
So how did you handle that? What were your techniques? Do you remember?
I think it was the friendship. I have friendship between the main character and people who have turned away from robots, and what they've done is they've augmented family pets to now become companions and co-workers. So they have a very finite lifespan. So she's very much engaged with the life of that character. And I think that gives me my opportunity to offer empathy and to make the character interesting to me to write, as well as the wonderful tall stiletto boots, which you must have.
Nice.
I was thinking about this panel for days, and painfully aware that particularly when Tammy shows up, I am the lone representation of testosterone on this panel, and feeling, like I'm walking in a minefield. And I realized that a new series that I'm working on, and only the first book has come out, has a young female protagonist who's part alien, and she has to defend not just her actions, but her life in front of this vast arena of all these other aliens. And it occurred to me, all those aliens are standing in for men.
Oh, interesting.
And
well, do we remember the name of this? Can I
the name of this is Ace of Corpses. I'm finishing book 2, which is Ace of Saints. Probably out next month.
What's the name of the author?
Me.
By you? Okay.
By me, yes. And it's just messing with the way I look at female characters. And I hadn't realized, this is all going on in the unconscious, that to write this female character, I'm projecting the aliens as males, and they're trying to tell her what she's supposed to do and restrict her free will. And it's like, damn, what am I trying to get out of my own head here?
No, that's good. That's good.
So
excellent. We love that.
We'll see.
It's interesting. I've been thinking recently about how, zombies have been, there's been a zombie renaissance forever and ever and ever. And I'm kind of feeling like zombies are the excuse for carnage. That maybe that is why zombies have had to become such a big thing in the last 15 years or so, is that we are allowed to do huge carnage against things that are human but aren't human, and that zombies are guilt-free. What do you think about that? Is that?
I've used that when changing hats and talking about the Klingon language. I've always said Klingons are free, have license to say and do whatever they want. They don't have to worry about being polite. They don't have to worry about, the social lubricants of conversation. Hi, how are you? Nice to see you. How's the family? They just walk up and say, what do you want? So I'm used to that mindset, but I haven't applied it or seen it or thought about it in terms of other fiction. And I don't read zombie fiction. So that's a fresh idea for me.
How do you ever do that, though, Julie, in your writing? Do you?
Oh, License to Carnage?
Yeah, License to Carnage.
That's a great title.
Yes, it is. Now we have a new anthology, License to Carnage. I'm in. Yes, in the sense of a biological sense, there are certainly events that happen that decimate a biome or a species, and I use that kind of threat to everything in a few of my science fiction novels, partly because it's actually easier to decimate an entire species than it is to just pick off the ruling class or something like this. Also, I wanted a formidable opponent in a biological sense. Otherwise, no, I'm not too, oh no, I shouldn't say that. I did in one book actually kill everybody off, but then I just have to move them to another dimension, so it doesn't count. Probably not. I don't write zombie fiction. I enjoy the funny zombie movies. I'm afraid I'm one of those people. The real ones I'm just too scared. I don't want to. No,
it's not your thing.
Oh,
all right. So back to women. who's been doing it really well? What have you been reading?
You did?
Huh, me?
You. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking of Ming in the Peaches.
Oh, Min, yeah. So, Lucky Peach, Min, a lot of my characters, um, they ultimately reject violence as a way to solve problems.
Hmm.
That's one of my things. So, yeah. So when I created Min in Lucky Peach, she's old. She's 83. And though she has very strong prosthetic legs, which are octopus legs, and she could do damage to people with them, that is just not the way she does things. So, yeah.
I think that's what if I may segue back to what we were talking about, in terms for me of a strong female character, or any character, quite frankly, it is, can they find a way to get it done without, let's just go splatter. And I certainly feel that there's so many options in a story in order to do that and still make it tense and exciting, and how is it ever going to work out? But compromise is actually not a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I look for and that I strive for in my own fiction is people engaged in the exercise of choice in their own lives. And when a character, and I think Min's a great example of this too, when a character has a variety of resources available to them and a number of ways they can go, which direction they take tells us everything we need to know about that character. It gives us things to relate to. It gives us things to repel us as well, depending on their choices and our own. And we are immediately engaged, as opposed to a single track where, it's a coupon adventure and you just pick up the magic sword or the ray gun and kill the bad guy and on to level 2. Mm-hmm. I want the characters to reflect. And that doesn't mean we can't have a female character whose solution is to kill everybody now and sort them out later. If that's her MO and she's got a reason for it. But I want people to own their choices.
You just reminded me of one of the things that drive me bonkers.
No, go.
Young reader was the feeling that if I was reading science fiction and there was a female character, if I couldn't actually do calculations about light speed in my head, then somehow I was a failure and I was not welcome in this story. And I spent a great deal of time when I was 10 memorizing to several decimal places important numbers so that I fit in those stories. And now I'm thinking back, no, in real life, real scientists actually just go and look it up or call up the number they need. They don't walk around with these. There are people who do, but those aren't interesting characters to me.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's limited hard drive space up here, right?
No.
No? Well,
no.
You're a psychologist, so we take your word for it.
There we go. No one has ever woken up one day and said, I'm full.
That's true.
I have a story about that.
I'm just remembering when I write down passwords, then I can forget them. And that, anyway, that is so off topic. Sorry, folks.
No, I like it.
Not for me, but okay.
Okay. So Julie mentioned having options and exhausting options, which made me think, and this is just so free association, Saturday morning, got my coffee. I started thinking immediately when you said that, I was thinking about that iconic moment in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones is faced with the person of color with a sword and just whips out his gun and blows him away, which is incredibly funny in the movie, maybe less funny now, maybe a little dated now, maybe we've seen it too often. But is humor a way of getting away with carnage? You mentioned humor in can we get away with more if we're funny about it?
Oh, in terms of what we'll consume, certainly I think there's an audience that's fairly broad for things like Ghostbusters as opposed to the narrow, you can't look over the cushion horror, but that's perhaps me. But in terms of writing it, that's an interesting one, because I think that's another way to make a character sympathetic. And Tanya Huff does a wonderful job of giving her characters these one lines in the worst moments. They don't feel wrong, and you're laughing, and yet it's a terrible moment. And she's just got this gift for showing people that are that good inside themselves that they just come out with that. And it just amazes me every time.
The problem with that, as I see it, is humor is much more subjective than drama.
Mm-hmm.
And so the funny scene that you've written or that you're reading that lets the author get away with, ramping up the carnage may not land as funny to everybody. And now all you're left with is the carnage.
Mm-hmm. She does it. It's not a funny scene. It's a character who.
It could be the tone. It could be a characteristic of the character involved. I get that. But if the reader doesn't see that as humorous, as entertaining in a lighter way, then they're just baffled by all the blood and guts everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So super good question in the question and answers panel.
Ooh.
Anonymous attendee asks, I've always enjoyed badass female characters like River Tam and Buffy and Xena. Xena. But lately I've found it sort of frustrating that these empowering female characters are so superhuman. Like a woman can't have power without being somehow magical. Do you have any good recommendations of stories with interesting, powerful female characters that aren't magical?
Well, we're watching Away right now, and if you like space exploration with that's actually sort of set in the real world type of thing, the female characters in Away I find are very, very real. They're no less achievable than anyone who studies hard and cares a lot to do something. And I think that's part of it is, can I be that? Can I become that person? And maybe I can't get a superpower, but I can be brave if I have to. I can defend my family. I can, give my food to someone else if I'm faced with it. So the inner hero person, that character I think is always more appealing in the long run, because the superhero character, which is another reason why Bad Boys is kind of, the boys, pardon me, is hits a chord. The ordinary guy doing things.
There's a Korean TV show called The King Eternal Monarch, which posits it's a interdimensional travel. The main characters travel back and forth between two different Koreas. The main female character is a sole police detective, and she says in one of the first episodes, when people are questioning her as to why she became a cop, she said, "Not everyone can be brave in their life. I decided that I could be brave, so I decided to become brave."
Nice.
Strength of character is always appealing, isn't it?
Andre Norton, who I loved and read, and I still reread once in a while, if you go back through all of her characters, they are almost without exception, even if they have a tiny bit of a gift of something, are regular people who actually just say, no one else can do it, I need to do it, I'm going to get it done. And I find that approach to storytelling more realistic, even when you're setting it something absolutely amazing. Oh, I see we have Tamora.
Tamora, hello. Hello and welcome, Tamora Pierce.
Tammy is mine.
Had some technical difficulties on our end.
We had beaucoup technical difficulties, but here we are.
You're here now.
Yep.
Welcome. Please, so we've been having a discussion. We're so happy to have you with us. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you have fresh out there in the world right now for people to read, because we're all desperate for reading material?
No pressure.
Sorry, Tammy.
I'm Tamora Pierce, but Tammy is who I am to folks. And I have been writing primarily for teenage readers since my first book came out in '82, I think, along the first adventure from the Song of the Lioness Quartet. And by and large, I have continued to write adventure novels, usually fantasy, always fantasy, for teenagers. But around about the 90s, I discovered that teenagers grow older, and it's a really major compliment when they still love your work, because I've been in situations where people who don't know me will ask me, well, who reads your stuff? And I say teenagers, and they are like, oh, kid lit, and I'm there. No, you don't get it. When a teenage kid falls for your books or preteen, they force them on their family and friends, who in turn force them on their family and friends. And the next thing you know, I've got a fan base, and you are trying to sell your next book.
Oh, absolutely. My little cousin
Yeah.
forced your books on me, and I will be eternally grateful.
Yeah. Well, it's the general truth of all science fiction and fantasy, really, is that we all write books where if they take off with one reader, that reader is going to go out and club someone and say, I'll stop if you read this. And then the person will come back and say, can I have some more, please?
Yes. Yes,
So,
indeed.
but that's what I do. My most recent thing is still in abeyance. I'm working on a trilogy about one of my main characters from other books. It's only this is when he is a teenager, because people have been on me for years to have boy heroes, and I'm looking at my casts where the girls are mostly dealing with guys, at least the ones who go for knighthood. I'm going, I thought I already had. But I went back to very absent-minded, funny, powerful mage in his teen years, when everything, of course, is going to go wrong. And the first book did very well. Tempests and Slaughter, nice low-key cover title. It kind of eases you into a concept that there might be action there somewhere. And I've been working on the second book with bad health ruining things for 2 years ever since. So I'm still working on it. I still know where the last 2 books of our story go. So please cease to panic and look wistfully when you meet me, because I feel guilty as is.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. No pressuring writers to write. We have a lot
No.
of things going on in our lives, that's for sure.
Except George.
No. We'll leave him alone.
No, I'm sure he gets inundated. He just shoves it into a closet.
That was an attempt at humor.
I was
Did not
laughing on the
succeed.
inside. I was.
Thank you.
Didn't you hear?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try not to listen to the voices inside.
And Julie, I don't even know if you remember me. We met at a convention near New York City
I remember
a
very
little time ago. And of course, I've kept up with your work. And, well, got to. I'm going to go back to Canada someday. They want me to at least be able to cite one of their favorite writers.
we have your books on our shelf.
Oh, thank you. I have yours as well.
Okay, I'm not going to try to, but I might.
So, Tammy, you are well known for fantastic female characters who are well-rounded, who are real people, but also can do a lot of damage.
Well, they have to study real hard to get to that part, whether they're mages or whether they're fighters. There's a long and grueling passage. Aram is caught up in my version of what happens to super gifted kids who end up in college at the age of 14. I've known some of those, and knew one in my first year in college, and they face strange issues that we would not even ordinarily think of. And Aram is just, he already got moved ahead in the first book from the lower academy for mages. That's part of the University at Carthage. He got moved to the adult school and for older students. And luckily he made friends with 2 other people who had been moved ahead. So he's not completely alone. But for those of you who've read the original series of the Dane books in Emperor Mage, they've met the grown-up Ozorn and Varese. And they're going, don't do it, dude, which gratifies me intensely.
We have a comment from Catherine in the audience who says, well, now with Tamora Pierce here, another excellent example to point out of non-magical yet compelling, powerful female characters, Kel in The Protector of the Small Quartet.
Yeah.
How do you handle characters like Kel?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, even in the books where the mage is the central hero, they are surrounded not necessarily by other mages, but by human beings. So I brushed up there. And with Kel, I wanted to do somebody who didn't have magic at the forefront, but who had that dream of becoming a female warrior in the service of the king. And her family is highly unconventional. So she learned all this stuff about fighting in her preteens in my equivalent of the samurai culture. So she's already learned about weapons. She has idolized Alana for years and years and years. Those stories she's heard about Alana and what Alana's done. And now it's her turn. Her parents are game, and she runs smack into the struggles that every woman entering a male-dominated area encountered. And she has to deal. I've known a lot of women who've been in that position, and women who've written me to say, I was a cop, I was a sailor, and each time I was promoted, I ran into this feces. So I had all those stories, and I based Kel herself. I figured Alana was very volatile. And Dane, who comes in time later, but Dane is very other-oriented. And Kel, I wanted to be a girl who would be strong enough and stubborn enough and yet not break the rules. That was the trick. Because the minute a woman cries in front of an all-male enclave, or if she loses her temper, game over.
Right.
It'll take her years to get any respect back from those unwashed persons.
Such a good point. Something we haven't touched on yet is the social price that a woman has to pay for being excellent.
Yeah, and
what she does.
And Kel does that in multitude. She is tested unjustly by the training master. The boys, by and large, hate her, except for the weirdo Neil, who decided at 15 he was going to do this training. And her advantages are that she is very determined, but in a very quiet way. She doesn't make a show of things. She doesn't argue things, because she already knows from her experience that's not going to work. So we get to end, she doesn't have magic, because everybody has kept saying, well, when are you going to write about someone who doesn't have magic? Well, these people who don't have magic in all the other books are living in a world where magic is a powerful thing. And Kel, of course, she greets it with pretty much the same attitude she does everything else, which is take a deep breath, enhance your calm, and keep on going.
Mhm, mhm. I got
Whatever.
marvelous. You remind me that one of the best responses I've had to Gossamer Mage was somebody writing to me about the fact that at last there was a character, a female character, who could go away from home to do a job, and her community supported her, everyone supported her. She
Yeah.
had childcare arranged, and to me, I just did it because sometimes I'm writing the world I want to see, and certainly in many places you see this coming, but it didn't seem unusual to me. But I've received a fair amount of mail back about that particular point. I thought then it was important to put it in.
I'm not surprised by that, and I love I love the book. You show us every aspect of that character, not just what her role is in the main conflict, but we see her relationship with her child, with the husband left back home, and I don't know spoilers. And it's rich and it's lush and it's a fully realized existence,
Well,
as opposed to just a character in a book, which all too often, and I'm probably beating this into the ground, are two-dimensional. And I think that's more often true of female characters written by men, who, because they might as well, we're writing aliens, often as not. And so we hit the high notes, the things that we see, and we miss the subtleties. And it's one of the reasons I really loved Gossamer Mage, because that character is so fully realized. I want to put in, while I have the speaking stick, very quickly, a plug for another brilliant author, Becky Chambers, who brings warmth and empathy to all of her characters, regardless of whether they're men or women or aliens or robots. They're people first. And I'm just blown away by almost everything she writes.
Thank you. I was out for about 10 minutes, so 5 minutes, so sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
One of the things that I loved about Esther Friesner's Chicks and Chainmail series was, I think it was Elizabeth Moon, I could be wrong, but there would be a story in each about the Bronze Bra Guild. Those are the women who've they've done their military service. Now they've come home in their 40s to marriage and children, but the only reason they're allowed to continue living in their environment is so when trouble comes, they go out and deal with it. And they're wonderful stories. They're hysterically funny, with these women complaining about their bones and everything. And you get to see the aftermath of that youthful idealism that leads to, somebody who's got to wrap up good when it gets cold because the bones will start to ache.
True. Elizabeth Moon, some amazing ass-kicking women characters. What's that?
She is a god to me.
Yes. I'm thinking specifically of The Deed of Paxenarian.
Yes.
Which,
I'm rereading it right now.
Are you?
For the millionth time.
There's a point in the middle of the trilogy where something terrible happens to Paxenarian. And I still remember the first time I read it, lying on my bed and just weeping for half an hour about it. Paxenarian is a paladin.
Yeah. She doesn't know it at first, though.
No.
And she doesn't believe it for a while either.
Yeah. And she doesn't have magic, points out one of the people. So we have 10 minutes until this panel ends. And I'm going to move to the Q&A. There's just one question in here right now. If you have any more.
We scared them.
Type them in. Yeah. Hopefully they've been so interested in what we've been saying that.
Let's go with that interpretation.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So question is, what do you think about reluctant female heroes? People who would rather stay home but are required to go get stuff done because of circumstances beyond their control. What do we think of those? Julie, do you want to jump right in there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Am I talking? Can you hear me? Oh, good.
Yeah.
I am.
Yep.
Have a little trouble here too. Yes, I have no problem with a reluctant character because we all face decisions, and as Lawrence was saying earlier, the choices being made in a story by a character tell you so much about that character. I'd like it to be. The reluctance is because of what the cost is to the character, not even so much as anything else. So leaving home, you are faced with that distance from those you love. Going forth, is there anyone else who can do it, or are you following footsteps? I mean, these kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely good point.
Absolutely, yes. We all have this common experience of being hit with something we don't like and we don't want. And any decent fantasy writer, any decent writer is going to draw on that commonality. And let's face it, how many times have we been faced with stuff we so don't want to do? I am remembering and flashing back on college mathematics, which I flunked 2 sections twice each and had to scramble to create a major for myself. That struggle is part of what makes a reader identify with it when they wouldn't normally consider picking up a weapon and going out and taking names. This is somebody they can identify with.
I'm very proud of a character I created, Evan Gooseberry, because it started as a character who has a lot of phobias, and how do you deal with them when you're basically working with everything that you're terrified of? But his struggle to go past it and the therapy he undergoes and the routines he's found, I really, really enjoy writing him, and I find he's a very realistic character to me, if that makes sense, because you have to believe in your own characters.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the critical part there. With a reluctant protagonist, they have to change. They may not change willingly, and it may be the events of the story that finally push them into an active agency. And when that happens, we cheer. Mm-hmm. Right? We've seen them, it's a hobbit wanting to sit at home and have second breakfast and not go on these adventures. They're bothersome and noisy. But but when it happens, when we are pushed beyond our limits, whatever they may be, and they could be silly limits. Yeah. I couldn't get cream at the grocer's. That's enough. And now I'll go out and fight the war. And so we get that character arc. What you do in the sequel, when your reluctant hero is now a badass warrior, that's a problem for book 2. But the danger is if the character manages to remain the reluctant protagonist throughout the story and is unchanged.
Right, so that would be a bit of a wet blanket situation. Yeah. It would be hard to keep people's interest.
It's all about agency.
One
choice.
More question here, and then we're going to start wrapping up because we are 5 minutes from the end. Samuel asks, what makes a female heroine different from a male one? You can't take a book with a male hero, change the name to a female one, and have it work. Why is that? Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, but they're obscene. You had females are built differently. How's that? Their strengths are different. If you take a raw male and a raw female, things like musculature, things like speed, things like being able to survive longer in an unpleasant environment, those things are all going to be different. And for the women, there is the added alert of keeping herself from being damaged, beaten up, whatever, by males. Males don't get that. And if you put a guy in a female academy, that is not going to happen for him. If he is of alternate sexuality, he may have other difficulties, but not that one. So yes, there are automatically issues. And the way to do it is just to be real for me. I have had mothers come up to me and shake my hand and say, when my daughter got her first period, I sat her down for the talk. And she said, no, don't worry about it, Mom. Tammy Pierce already taught me what I need to know.
Amazing.
Our books are powerful, and they're powerful in subtle ways, and also guide characters. Where is the vulnerability? Because then you can put a pointy thing in it and scritch around and make them go, ah!
I'm having great fun with an alien species that when the females can be around other people, anybody, until they reach sexual maturity, and then they're obligate predators, so they have to be isolated, and they spend their retirement in pools with other females being fed things, and just to twist things around about who does what.
Yeah.
But it means being conscious of what that gender means to that species or to people.
Right, and especially it's not going to be the same for aliens as for us.
Very quickly, Terry Pratchett. Oh gosh, what's the title? The Women.
The Weird Sisters?
No, this is the one. Look up Terry Pratchett's Irv. It's about a woman who goes searching for her brother and finds she'll have better success if she's disguised as a male soldier in this unending war. And the things she finds out about people and about warfare, Infamous Regiment, I think.
The Monstrous Regiment.
A monstrous. I'm not going to tell you anymore, but this is a book you want to read about women in combat.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
disguised.
All right. Well, we are winding down the last 2 minutes. Everybody, please tell the attendees where they can see you today or tomorrow at Confluence. Do you have other panels, Tammy?
Yes, I do, but I don't have the list right now.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody, if you
Two
want to
more
see
panels,
Tammy,
though. And
two more panels?
The one of one, I think, is an interview for people to ask questions.
And I'm with you, Kelly, tonight at 10 for Feel the Love. I'm looking forward to that. You scoundrel,
Yes.
You got me into this, didn't you?
Yeah.
Coffee Clutch this afternoon with Jennifer Hoyne and another panel or two. And I'm in the game show with Steven Silver finally roped me in. So I'm doing those things. So see you later.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good. And Lawrence, where are you this weekend?
I have a panel at 1 o'clock on SF around the world. And tomorrow I have a coffee clutch and a reading. And I'll be reading from Soup of the Moment.
Excellent.
Cool.
And I have a reading at 2 p.m. today, which is, I will be reading from my lesbian stoner buddy comedy forthcoming, which is 2 p.m. So come to my reading. It's a lot of fun.
Title of that lesbian stoner buddy comedy?
A lesbian stoner buddy comedy with fairies.
The title?
The title is High Times in Low Parliament.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, the wonderful panelists, and thank you, audience, for your terrific questions. And enjoy the rest of the con.
Thanks.
Bye now.